How we doing out there, Grigori?
Most beautiful thing I have ever seen.
Kuz, you ready to make history?
Always, my friend.
Episode 1, Glasnost. In the year 2003, a few months after the official end of the Cold War, a new chapter in space exploration unfolds with the United States, the Soviet Union, North Korea, and several other nations forming the M7 Alliance. Now, this treaty symbolizes an era of cooperation and partnership, accelerating the progress of space exploration. The growing Mars colony, known as Happy Valley, is a testament to this alliance. Edward Baldwin, now the executive officer of Happy Valley, commands the Ranger spacecraft, where he witnesses his Soviet comrade, Grigory Kuznetsov, make history by becoming the first human to physically touch an asteroid. This monumental achievement is celebrated worldwide, while the Ranger team continues their mission to tow the asteroid towards Mars's orbit for future mining. The mission appears to be progressing smoothly, with the asteroid securely tethered to the Ranger with robust cables. Unfortunately, the situation takes a dramatic turn when one of the cables comes loose, placing additional stress on the remaining cables and threatening their stability. Recognizing the potential failure of the mission, Kuz decides to take a risky step, and despite the objections of the Happy Valley commander, Kuz ventures outside with a maintenance worker named Tom Parker, intending to retighten the cables. Once outside, they discover that the problem is far worse than anticipated, as the entire truss is wobbling and coming apart, resulting in Kuz's foot getting trapped in the metallic structure. Tragedy strikes when a loose part of the truss swings back, impaling Parker and killing him instantly. Stunned by the turn of events, Kuz communicates the grim situation to Ed, but when Ed expresses his intention to go outside and attempt a rescue, Kuz informs him that his suit is already punctured and that his oxygen supply is dwindling. Accepting his fate, Kuz instructs Ed to detach him from the Ranger, to avoid risking any more lives, and with a heavy heart, Ed bids farewell to his friend and detaches him from the spacecraft, leaving Kuz to meet his end in the vast, unforgiving expanse of space. Meanwhile, at the Space Center in Houston, Aleida Rosales is deeply disturbed by what she has just witnessed. The terrifying sight of the mission falling apart triggers flashbacks of the devastating bombing that took place approximately 8 years prior, which resulted in the deaths of many people, including her friend and mentor, Margot Madison. Unable to continue her work, Aleida steps away from her post and exits the control room. Episode 2, Have a Nice Soul. In the wake of Kuz's tragic demise, Danielle Poole is persuaded by NASA's newly appointed administrator, Eli Hobson, to come out of retirement and return to Mars to take command of Happy Valley. This decision is influenced by the high regard that she holds among all the nations present in Happy Valley, not only the Americans and the Soviets, but also the highly reclusive North Koreans. Upon Danielle's arrival at Happy Valley, she's warmly greeted by Ed, who enthusiastically gives her a brief tour of the base, and afterwards, she delivers an inspiring, well-received speech that reassures all the nations of Happy Valley that unity and honesty are key elements to recover from the recent setback.
All right, let's get to work.
Coming to the realization that she can no longer continue her work at NASA due to the trauma that she experienced there, Aleida decides to drown her sorrows at the local bar. Here, she finds Kelly Baldwin, who's also dealing with disappointment, as NASA has informed her that despite the potential of her project to discover microbial life on Mars, they have to withdraw funding due to other priorities. After a night of heavy drinking together, Kelly wakes up at Aleida's house, where she finds her newly motivated, revealing that she spent the entire night devising a pitch for Kelly's project, planning to approach the private sector for funding, thus forming a partnership between the two. Presumed dead for the past 8 years, Margot Madison has been leading a secretive and quiet life in the Soviet Union. Her days are filled with routine activities such as making coffee every morning and taking a stroll to the local bakery. However, one day, she notices a shift in the atmosphere as the usually friendly baker is overtly rude and the streets are eerily empty. Her suspicions that something is amiss are confirmed when she stumbles upon a confrontation between the police and a group of people in the street, which rapidly escalates when the police throw gas bombs and start beating the gathered civilians. In the heat of the fight, Margot tries to intervene to help an older man, leading the police to arrest her as well, along with everybody else. Episode 3: The Bear Hug. Planning to mend his relationship with his wife, Miles Dale, an unemployed oil rig worker, has secured a job on Mars with the hope of earning a substantial income to support his family. However, upon arrival at Happy Valley, he's confronted with the grim reality that maintenance workers are subjected to subpar living conditions, with cramped quarters and inferior food compared to the higher-ranked personnel. To make matters worse, a significant portion of his income is deducted for living expenses, leaving him with a less net income than he earned on Earth. Determined to change his circumstances, Miles decides to collaborate with Ilya Brezhov, who operates a secret bar in a black market in Happy Valley. As Ilya imparts the secrets of his illicit trade, Miles begins to deliver the smuggled items to their customers. This not only earns him recognition from the higher-ranking employees, but also increases his income, bringing relief to his financial situation.
Always be thinking ahead. Nothing is free.
In their quest to secure funding for their project, Kelly and Aleida meet with different companies, but despite presenting a compelling case, they face numerous rejections, leaving them with no other option than to meet with Dev Issa. Despite the initial reluctance, Dev ultimately agrees to fund the project and manages to get the support of the majority of the Helios shareholders, allowing him to resume his position as CEO, giving him the power to instantly fire all board members who had previously opposed him.
You are barred from this building effective immediately. Files, access, and your emails have been locked. Please get out of my face.
Meanwhile, after being held in a small cell and facing harsh conditions, Margot is eventually blindfolded and transported to meet with a former KGB handler, Irina Morozova. After apologizing to Margot for all that she's been through, Irina reveals that a coup has taken place with her aide, leading the staunch communist, Fyodor Kozenko, to become the new leader of the Soviet Union after he had overthrown the pro-Westerner Mikhail Gorbachev. Acknowledging Margot's engineering prowess, Irina informs her that she needs her assistance with the Soviet space program, promising her that her ingenuity will finally receive the appreciation that it deserves. Episode 4: House Divided. As a result of the coup, tensions are rising among the Soviet inhabitants of Happy Valley, with some supporting the return of hardline communism and others opposing it. This tension culminates in a confrontation between Svetlana Zakharova, Ed's co-pilot and a romantic interest, and a maintenance worker named Vasily Galkin. Despite initially ignoring Galkin's attempts to antagonize her for not supporting Kozenko, Svetlana loses her composure when he calls her a traitor, leading to a physical fight, during which she knocks him down, causing damage to his suit. Recognizing the danger that Galkin's in, she immediately calls for help, and he's placed inside a hyperbaric chamber where he remains comatose. This incident heightens the tension between the US and the Soviet Union, with Irina insisting that Hobson must order Svetlana to be sent back to Earth to face punishment for injuring a fellow Soviet. Later that night, while sharing a moment with his wife, a frustrated Hobson comes up with a plan. Realizing that India is the only neutral country in the M7, he decides to send Svetlana there, where she can face justice under an impartial judge. Despite this deal being satisfactory to the leaders on Earth, things aren't as straightforward in Happy Valley, as Ed refuses to let Svetlana return to Earth due to his suspicion that the new Soviet regime won't stick to their deal. Despite Ed's opposition, Danielle, being the commander of Happy Valley, informs him that she's already agreed to the deal, and that Svetlana is to be sent to Earth that evening. Infuriated, Ed heads to see Svetlana, who's preparing for her departure from Mars, and when he suggests that they should go into hiding in the lower levels of the base, she, in her usual collected demeanor, informs him that she has accepted her fate and refuses to let him risk his career for hers. After the two share a goodbye kiss, Ed decides to walk her down through the angered workers. With one final gaze into each other's eyes, he sends her off before tearfully walking back among the crowd. Episode 5: Goldilocks. A few days later, the world is stunned by NASA's announcement of an unprecedented discovery, an asteroid nicknamed Goldilocks, containing more iridium than has ever been mined on Earth. Due to the extraordinary amount of the rare element, the estimated worth of Goldilocks is a staggering $20 trillion. As all members of the M7 scramble to devise a plan to bring Goldilocks to Earth within the next 10 weeks, Dev suddenly declares his intent to relocate to Mars, firmly believing that the future lies there. When Kelly and Aleida confront him about this abrupt decision, Dev informs them of a significant change in roles. From now on, Aleida will be responsible for managing Helios' Earth-based deals, including the imminent negotiations with the M7 concerning Goldilocks. As for Kelly, Dev proposes that she accompany him to Mars, believing that her astrobiology project would greatly benefit from her being there, allowing her to study her subject matter firsthand. After contemplating this sudden change, both Aleida and Kelly agree to Dev's new plan, with Kelly deciding to take her 8-year-old son Alex with them to Mars. During a Ranger mission, Palmer James, who is now operating as Ed's co-pilot, notices a tremor in Ed's right hand, and this observation leads him to the unsettling realization that Ed is concealing a medical condition, thereby putting his entire flight crew at risk. Once Palmer shares this information with Danielle, she also realizes that it's her duty to confront Ed, and knowing very well that this would further strain their relationship, Danielle eventually approaches Ed and condemns him for putting his pride before his team's safety. As expected, Ed retaliates with anger, leading Danielle to inform him that she's made her final decision, and removes him from flight status, and also, because she can no longer trust him to be honest with her, she relieves him from his duties as an executive officer. Episode 6: Leningrad. In a bid to strategize the capture and mining of Goldilocks, representatives from all M7 nations, along with the delegates from Helios, convene for a summit at the Soviet Union. But despite extensive discussions with Irina and Hobson after the summit, Aleida fails to broker a deal. Now this prompts Margot, who's been observing the negotiations, to suggest that she might emerge from hiding to personally work with Aleida, fully aware that this move would cause her to be ostracized in the US. With Irina's consent, Margot visits Aleida's hotel room, and as she peruses her work, Aleida comes out from the shower, startled to find someone else in her room. However, upon recognizing Margot, she's taken aback but quickly rushes to embrace her, clearly grateful to find out that she's still alive.
Oh my god!
As their initial emotional surge subsides, Margot explains her defection to the Soviet Union, driven by fear of arrest in the US for sharing classified information. Despite Margot recounting the hardships that she's endured, Aleida expresses her resentment towards Margot for her abrupt departure, leaving her to grapple with the trauma of the bombing alone. Acknowledging that Aleida may never forgive her, Margot proposes that they temporarily set aside their differences to devise a plan to bring Goldilocks into Earth's orbit. Meanwhile, now that he has a lot of free time on his hands, Ed decides to visit Ilya's bar, much to the surprise of the patrons. Upon his arrival, Ilya warmly welcomes Ed, who reveals his awareness of Ilya's black market operations, expressing a seemingly genuine interest in its workings. Having fostered a better relationship with the workers by empathizing with their struggles, Ed delivers an impassioned speech, underscoring the significance of the workers' roles and advocating for a strike to demand improvements in their working conditions. Episode 7: Crossing the Line. On the 7th day of the ongoing workers' strike, their demands remain unfulfilled, and negotiations led by Ed and a trusted worker named Samantha Macy are being stonewalled by Danielle, as she's unable to meet the demands due to her primary focus on the colossal upcoming mission to capture the Goldilocks asteroid. In the midst of the strike, Dev, Kelly, and Alex finally arrive at Happy Valley, where Kelly is overjoyed to be reunited with her dad, and Alex gets to meet his granddad in person for the first time. Recognizing the detrimental impact of the strike on his work in Happy Valley, Dev wastes no time in reaching an agreement with most of the striking workers by promising them a significant increase in their income and retirement pensions. This move, however, leaves Ed and Sam disappointed.
Well done, Dev. You just killed Mars.
When Ed confronts Dev about this, Dev reveals his ulterior motive, telling him that he needs Ed's expertise and leadership skills for a secretive mission that he has planned. Reassuring Ed that he too believes that life on Mars is the future, Dev discloses that he plans to hijack the Goldilocks asteroid, intending to take it into Mars's orbit instead of Earth. Episode 8: Legacy. Having defected to the US at the same time that Margot defected to the Soviet Union, Sergei Nikolov has been living a peaceful and reserved life, working as a physics teacher and enjoying his simple existence with his partner. One day, however, he hears a familiar voice on the news. It's Margot, revealing in a press conference that she's been secretly living in the Soviet Union for the past 8 years, and is announcing that she'll be visiting the US to work with NASA on the Goldilocks project, having been granted diplomatic immunity, protecting her from prosecution for treason. Stunned by this revelation, Sergei decides that he can't miss the opportunity to meet with Margot.
Hello, Mr. Rosales.
To facilitate this, he appears at Aleda's house unannounced, expressing his need to talk to her. During their conversation, he discloses that the only reason Margot betrayed her country was to save his life. Armed with the knowledge, Aleda heads to the Space Center where she finds a closely guarded and watched Margot. Understanding the delicacy of the situation, she hands Margot some work that she needs help with, and as Margot starts looking through it, she finds a familiar coded message from Sergei. Back at the hotel, Margot decodes the message, revealing a location and a time for a meeting, and after some contemplation, she eventually arrives at the location to meet with Sergei. But when Margot tries to explain that they can't be in each other's lives anymore, Sergei reveals the real reason that he thought it was necessary to meet. He discloses that Irina isn't the person Margot thinks she is. In fact, she was his handler with the KGB and was the one threatening his life, leading to the predicament that Margot and Sergei found themselves in. Concluding his speech, Sergei warns Margot that returning to the Soviet Union would be a grave mistake, as Irina cannot be trusted. Episode 9: Brazil. A month into their secret operation to seize control of Goldilocks, Dev and Ed, along with their team, have successfully established a covert control room in the lower levels of the base, but without arousing the suspicion of the upper echelons in command. Unaware of Dev and Ed's activities, Danielle becomes suspicious when she discovers that Miles has been orchestrating a black market operation within Happy Valley. The recent influx of smuggled communication and computing equipment leads her to believe that there might be a plot to interfere with the Goldilocks mission. Upon receiving this information from Danielle, Hobson decides to adopt a more aggressive approach, ordering the undercover CIA and KGB agents stationed at Happy Valley to initiate interrogations of suspicious workers, starting with Miles. Having been in regular communication with Margot for the past month, even meeting with her at Aleda's house for dinner, Sergei is optimistic about finding a solution to their predicament with Irina, proposing that they both should defect to Brazil as it has an advanced space program. As Margot and Sergei return to their respective hotel and motel rooms, they each take a moment to prepare some burgers while optimistically pondering the idea of fleeing to Brazil, envisioning a serene life together. Fate seems to have other plans though, as the moment that Sergei is about to sink his teeth into his food, he meets an abrupt end with a bullet to the head. Immediately afterwards, the assailant frames it as a self-inflicted wound before disappearing into the night. Episode 10: Perestroika. The following day, Margot makes her way to the Space Center, resuming her mission to guide Goldilocks into Earth's orbit. Unexpectedly, she discovers that Irina has decided to travel to the US, sparking Margot's suspicion about Irina uncovering Sergei's escape plan. Regrettably, this insight arrives too late, as when Margot sends Aleda to Sergei's motel to warn him, Aleda is met with the grim reality of his death. Upon receiving the devastating news, a heartbroken Margot immediately figures out what really happened and decides to confront Irina, who feigns complete ignorance. Realizing that she's attracting too much attention, Margot stops herself before making an outright accusation. Meanwhile, in a secluded room at Happy Valley, Miles endures various forms of torture, including physical abuse and exposure to elevated levels of CO2, resulting in severe headaches, disorientation, and vomiting.
Got some on my shoe!
Despite the intolerable conditions, he resists revealing the entire scheme. However, once the agents threaten to implicate his wife in his smuggling operation, potentially leading their children to being placed in Child Protective Services, Miles succumbs and discloses the entire scheme, unveiling the existence of an alternate control room designed to operate the plasma engines attached to Goldilocks and launch it into Mars's orbit. Now with this knowledge, Danielle orders her crew to raid the lower levels of Happy Valley, which allows her to uncover the alternate control room. Yet, due to Dev's timely warning about their operation being compromised, she finds it completely abandoned. Despite Danielle ordering the Ranger's pilot to ignite the engines, launching Goldilocks towards Earth, Ed and Dev refuse to give up and devise a completely different strategy. Recognizing Sam as their inside agent on the Ranger, they manage to communicate with her via a restricted North Korean channel. Emphasizing that she's their last hope, they instruct her to activate the manual override switch located on the exterior of the Ranger. To accomplish this, Sam suits up and commences her climb outside of the ship. Upon reaching the override switch, she realizes that it won't stay in place, which forces her to use her safety tether to secure it. This becomes even more dangerous when she's attacked by Palmer. Despite the attack, Sam remains steadfast and manages to overpower Palmer, leaving him suspended from his tether while she inputs the signal frequency provided by Dev, giving him control over the Ranger's engines. Back on Earth, the engineers at the Space Center deduce that the only countermeasure that they can implement at this point is to enter a command that would completely shut down the engines. Meanwhile, Margot and Aleida come to the realization that if they truly desire the advancement of space exploration, Goldilocks should, in fact, be directed to Mars, especially considering the self-interest and power-driven motives of Earth's leaders. Realizing that Margot has too many eyes on her, Aleida insists that she should be the one to input the new code. Under everyone's noses, Aleida successfully inputs the code, effectively negating the shutdown command, and as a result, the engines successfully complete their ignition sequence, much to the jubilation of Dev, Ed, and their team, who celebrate as Goldilocks embarks on its journey towards Mars' orbit. Upon discovering that the code was altered, Irina immediately points the finger towards Aleida, but wanting to protect her, Margot quickly intervenes, asserting that she was the one who tampered with the code, and that Aleida had nothing to do with it. Infuriated by this, Irina withdraws Margot's diplomatic immunity, leading Hobson to order her arrest. As Margot is escorted away in handcuffs, Aleida rushes to her, embracing her in a moment of forgiveness for all of her past mistakes and expressing gratitude for her selfless act. In the aftermath, Margot faces trial for her treasonous actions, while Danielle, having sustained an almost fatal gunshot wound in the riots at Happy Valley following the Goldilocks incident, is honorably returned to Earth, where she's warmly welcomed by her overjoyed family. Years later, in 2012, an optimistic Dev watches as Goldilocks orbits Mars, conveying that the mining of iridium is underway, with the benefits directly aiding the flourishing colony on the Red Planet. And that just about wraps up For All Mankind Season 4. I appreciate everyone who checked out our recap and for sticking around to the very end. If you want to see more videos like this, just subscribe to the channel, and if you do, don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. If you want to be extra nice, you can share the video with a friend or drop us a like. We'll be back soon with a new recap, but until then, BingeBot is logging off.